Hi, welcome to Save Quest, where I cover my interests in games I enjoy. This is episode 2 of learning Warhammer, and where better to start than picking a faction. I did a lot of research for this video, and I learned a lot in the last couple days. If any of this feels confusing, you're not alone. And I spent most of my time making this video confused, but all this was learned through some research. Whether it's the Warhammer website or the Lexicanum, I'll link everything in the description, and I'll do my best to answer any questions in the comments. Anyway, I'm really excited for this episode, so without further ado, let's get into it. In Warhammer, there are many different factions. Factions are essentially different teams or groups, each one having their own different armies, lore, and playstyle. There are 3 different categories of factions: Imperium of Man, Chaos, and Xenos. If you're interested in a specific category, I'll show the timestamps on screen, but I recommend watching all the way through because you never know what you might be interested in. The first group we'll cover is Space Marines. Space Marines are a part of the Imperium, but because there are so many different kinds, we're going to treat them as their own group. But first, a little about the Imperium of Man. Basically the human civilization of 40k, so put in the simplest terms possible, the armies of the Imperium would be anything that fights for the humans. Anyway, back to Space Marines. Space Marines are genetically engineered to be soldiers, standing at 8 feet tall and can run up to 60 miles per hour and about 500 pounds of armor. It shows. There are 7 main chapters of Space Marines. Technically there are thousands, but most people choose one of the main 7, and for the purpose of this video we're going to keep it to those. First up, Ultramarines. If you've heard of Warhammer, you've seen them. That dark blue armor? Yeah, they're the poster boys of Warhammer, very by the book and organized in battle. Second, Black Templars. Black Space Marines wearing black crosses. These guys are loyalists to the Emperor, very aggressive and no joke. Blood Angels, red with gold accents. These guys look really cool, and like their name suggests, they're bloodthirsty. In battle, they're agile and like to fight in close quarters. Death Watch, black armor with 1 silver arm, focusing on alien threats. They pull warriors from all different Space Marine chapters, and the silver arm is to indicate that they're part of a club. Grey Knights, silver armor and our first Psyker appearance. That means they have psychic weapons and abilities. The Demon Hunter Space Marines. Space Wolves, blue-gray armor, Viking Marines, and some of the most clever of them. Up close in battle using mainly melee weapons. Alright, that's it for Space Marines, and again, those are just the main 7 that Games Workshop makes models for. Continuing through the armies, we have the rest of the Imperium of Man. First up, Adepta Sororitas, the Sisters of Battle, or, as some people say, nuns with guns. Human women trained from childhood to fight for the Emperor and the Imperial Church. Adeptus Custodes, standing guard over the Emperor. Every Custodes is unique, genetically modified just like Space Marines, except way stronger, and when it comes to the infantry of each of the factions, these guys are the strongest by far. Adeptus Mechanicus, humans that heavily augment themselves. They build pretty much all the weapons and vehicles for the Imperium. Astra Militarum, or the Imperial Guard, the regular humans of the Imperium. No special weapons or armor, but they have sheer numbers on their side. Imperial Knights, massive mechs piloted by an elite few men and women. Each mech is essentially a one-man army. And that wraps up the armies of the Imperium. Whether they're launching missiles from pipe organs or running around in massive mechs, they all fight for one reason: the survival of mankind, and they all serve the Emperor. Now we're on to the Chaos factions, the corrupted soldiers and traitors who turn their back on the Emperor. Before we get started, let's talk about the Horus Heresy so everything makes a little bit more sense. The Horus Heresy was basically a civil war across the galaxy. The Emperor's favorite son, Horus, fell to Chaos and dragged along half of those Space Marines with him. He basically messed up everything and made this all really complicated. Chaos Space Marines. These guys look really cool. Heck, all of the Chaos factions do. These were once Space Marines, used to be loyal to the Emperor, and they still wear the same gear but covered in spikes and mutations. Death Guard. Green armor, basically undead zombie marines, and they worship Nurgle, the chaos god of disease and despair. Thousand Sons, probably my favorite looking army. These guys are psychers, and their god is Tzeentch, the god of magic and change. World Eaters, yet another cool looking faction. They worship Khorne, the god of blood and war. Emperor's Children, sounds counterintuitive, right? It's kinda intentional. Before the Horus Heresy, they were the most elite and loyal Space Marines. And after the Horus Heresy, they fell to Chaos and became followers of Slaanesh, the god of excess and perfection, and they kept the name to be funny. Chaos Knights, remember the Imperial Knights? Same thing, but after the Heresy, they fell to Chaos. That wraps up Chaos, and I'm tired of talking about people, so let's talk about aliens. Xenos. This section is the longest, totaling 8 different factions. Eldari, they're space elves, and the second oldest race in 40k. They eliminated death amongst themselves and got very bored, so through a series of very interesting actions, they created Slaanesh, the god of excess and perfection, and Slaanesh wiped out most of the Eldari. Drukhari, dark space elves, basically the worst of the worst. They kidnap people from other planets and torture them until they die so they can avoid Slaanesh consuming their souls. Necrons, robot space skeletons, and the oldest in 40k. They gave up their souls to the Catan and had their consciousness moved into robots. Tyranids, hive mind alien bugs. They'll wipe out entire planets, and to them, everything is prey. Leagues of Votann, space dwarves. They usually mind their own business, mining and trading on their own planet, unless you have something they want. Genestealer cults, half human, half Tyranid, and they're also controlled by the hive mind. Orcs, green and loud. They're kind of like your little brother in the sense that they're kind of stupid and just like fighting. The Tau Empire. They're the youngest race in the galaxy, but also the most united. The Tau actually work with other species and even humans. And that's the Xenos. I think my favorite is the Tau just because of how cool their models are. And again, if any of that was confusing, I promise you're not alone. I was confused all throughout writing the script and spent hours doing research. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. So by now you might be wondering, what faction did you choose? And it wasn't an easy choice. There was a lot of really cool factions and I plan on making multiple armies. But what I chose first was the Black Templars. They have some really cool models, and because it's mostly black, I figured it would be easier to paint, rather than something like the Thousand Suns, which will most likely be my second army. Next video, I'll go over list making, basically putting together a list of models to build out your army. I'll also go over basic model supplies you'll need to build and paint. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed, please consider subscribing, and I'll catch you all next week.